Also, I want to welcome those of you who are joining us via Channel 5. The goal of the Read-In is to make the celebration of African American literacy and literature a part of Black History Month activities, and February is Black History Month. So, together today, we're honoring the role of education, its role in celebrating and spreading the words of people who tell the stories, and its role in teaching and encouraging those who will study and learn from those stories. Together, we're honoring story. Together, we're demonstrating the power of sharing literature with one another. Together, let's thank those who've had a hand in organizing this event. I'd like to point out Pete Ferguson and Shannon Letcher of Lincoln Public Schools. Let's give them a round of applause. And from the libraries, both Sheila Jacobs and Brenda Ely have pulled this together with help from Lisa Voss, so a round of applause for them as well, please. And a special thank you to each of our readers who's here today. I want to thank you for doing that, for presenting that, and for sharing part of yourself through literature. We are so pleased to have you here today. A practical note is that we're not going to introduce each speaker. Instead, they'll appear one after another in the order in which they're shown on the program, and we'll simply follow each other. And now together, let's enjoy these readings of African American authors. And now I'd like to have Shanna Letcher start us off. Shanna.
Thank you, Pat. Welcome, everyone, to the 2015 African American Read-In. My name is Shanna Letcher. And my role as an advocate for African American scholars in our district allows me the opportunity to share my love of reading, which no doubt has assisted me with being where I am today. My wish for our scholars is that they gain a love not only for the school libraries, but the public libraries as well. With modern technology, our scholars seldom get to experience the actual smell and the feel of the written word. It can almost become their best friends. This year, during the month of February, one of my goals is to help make more scholars aware of our heritage through the art of reading. Reading about our ancestors and how hard they fought for the right to learn to read. So let's get started, and in the interest of time, like Pat says, you'll come up and read. I'm going to I have the privilege of introducing one of our scholars, Ms. Royla Bush from Lincoln High School, and if everyone would stand for the Negro National Anthem.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet straight from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Thank you, Roya. That was a beautiful piece. Thank you for sharing your talents. Hello, my name is Ash Wimes, and I'm with Bryan College of Health Sciences. I serve as the Recruitment and Diversity Coordinator, and part of my role there is I am actively involved in the process of selecting students, and then also making sure that we provide equal access and opportunity for those students seeking to explore health science education. The piece that I've selected to read is titled Reflections on the March and Martin Luther King. This piece was written by my father, and so the reason I selected this piece was the piece reminds me of conversations that we had and that we continue to have today around issues of social justice. And so with that being said, I will go ahead and share this excerpt. When I think about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I have a dream speech in his life, I'm reminded of the blueprint he put forth that would build a great nation honoring our professed ideal of with liberty and justice for all. His words not only forged the mental and societal steel necessary for people to be free at last, but for America to be free as well. He envisioned a country that was and is recognized as being great. His words and deeds challenged all of us to strive to be magnificent. He embraced the necessity and power to bring people from all walks of life and from all over the globe to march peacefully for dignity and for humanity of all. And he realized that one person's oppression is the oppression of all. We as a nation must continue to march until all barriers constructed out of hate, bigotry, and ignorance are removed. King and the non-violent approach to change were grounded in belief that the exchange of ideas, as opposed to the exchange of insults so many today equate to dialogue, was the true measure of society. Our willingness to see people as one race, the human race, comprised of a multitude of colors, cultures, traditions, and customs, must not be lost in the valley of ethnocentric delusion. He knew the very soul of America would not be determined by the words of our enemies, but rather the silence of our friends. Our friends in the clergy, our friends in employment, our friends in our neighborhoods, our friends in our schools, and yes, our friends in our faces. Today, we still refuse as a nation to deal with the issues King spoke of and fought to eliminate from our society. His belief that there could not be economic justice without social justice is as relevant today as it was in 1963. The wealth gap and concentration of the same is just as pervasive, if not worse. And yet, as a nation, we prefer to ignore or punish those who are suffering economically and socially. Conversely, society has no problem asking those very groups to make ultimate sacrifices in the defense of freedom. Some people and groups have no problem suppressing the ability of those they find undesirable, unworthy, or allegedly unpatriotic to participate in our democracy. They propose laws designed to suppress the ability to vote of these groups, restrict where they can live, or deny the opportunity to pursue a decent and quality-driven life. King's loss of life was a sorrow for his wife and children and a nation that would not heed his words or his call. On his anniversary march, in his great voice of reason, we must pause and ask ourselves some 50 years later, have we really changed? We must ask ourselves, Who works at our company or organizations? Who's missing from our boards or our committees? Who's missing from our leadership teams? Who lives in my neighborhood? What do my friends and the friends of my children look like? Who goes to our church? Am I a drum major for justice? Will I have the courage to voice when others are being treated unfairly or wrong? Will I show true leadership to coincide with my title of a parent, a colleague, owner, boss, director, supervisor, pastor, a friend? Will I act when someone is being discriminated against, treated unfairly, demeaned, teased, harassed, perhaps because of the color of their skin, the ethnic group that they are part of, religion, gender, their sexual orientation, their gender identity, language, or disability? At this time, in commemorating the day in history when America began to legally transition to a more inclusive society by passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, it is interesting to look back to see where we have come if we examine the dream of King against outcomes and progress of groups historically denied access, including women and minorities and people with disabilities. Their contributions to society and the improvement of the quality of life for all who have been enormous. One has to wonder where this nation would be if those same groups had several hundreds of years of opportunities to fulfill their dreams and ambitions. What would have happened if the color of their skin or gender or abilities were considered a positive instead of a negative? The consequence is that we have squandered human potential and paid a terrible price because of ignorance. And in the world today, any resources, whether it be human or otherwise, we waste because of our fears, anxieties, or inability to reach across the canyon of indifference is a tragedy, and one we cannot afford to repeat. King provided a blueprint because he was deeply concerned about the soul of America. He wanted us to truly build a more perfect union. Let's continue to project by removing the bias, closed-minded detours in our heads, and begin to open up objective freeways in our hearts when dealing with one another. King, I suspect, would be honored as he so richly deserves.
Good afternoon. I'm Officer Chastity Jackson with Lincoln Police Department, and it's an honor for me to be here today. I will be sharing with you from Oprah Winfrey's book, What I Know for Sure. And this is something that I value, and I believe that obviously without this particular person, there would be no us, and that is mothers. I am a mother before I put this uniform on, and it's an honor and a privilege for me to value being a mother above anything else, and I respect and appreciate all mothers. I'm in awe of good mothers, those heroines all around me who sacrifice daily out of love for their children. In our society, we give motherhood plenty of lip service. We pat moms on the head, bring them flowers on Mother's Day, and honor them before crowds. But at the end of the day, we don't extend them the same respect we would a professor, a dentist, an accountant, or a judge. Women who choose full-time mothering are often put in a box by their friends and former colleagues, a container labeled just a mom. I believe the choice to become a mother is a choice to become one of the greatest spiritual teachers there is, to create an environment that's stimulating and nurturing, to pass on a sense of responsibility to another human being, to raise a child who understands that he or she is created from good and capable of anything. I know for sure that what few callings are more honorable. To play down mothering as small is to crack the very foundation on which greatness stands. The world can only value mothering to the extent that women everywhere stand and declare that it must be so. In our hands, we hold the motherhood, the power to transform the perception of motherhood. Whether we decide to work full-time while raising our children, stay at home with our kids, or even bear no children at all, we need to understand that any put down of the decision to mother is a threat to a woman's choices everywhere. We should no longer allow a mother to be defined as just a mom. It is on her back that great nations are built. We should no longer allow any woman's voice to be drowned out or disregarded. As we affirm other women, and as we teach our sons, husbands, and friends to hold them in the highest regard, we honor both mothers whose shoulders we've stood on and the daughters who will one day stand tall on ours. In May and every other month of the year, I thank every great spiritual teacher who goes by the name of Mother. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Benny Shobe. I'm the president of the Lincoln branch of the NAACP. I'm honored to be here today and honored to get the opportunity to speak with you about reading and share with you something that is really dear to my heart. When I was a small child a long time ago, my parents were working parents, and they would often leave me with aunts and uncles and other family members to take care of me. My great aunt Sarah was one of those people that came through often. Usually I was a little bit rambunctious and didn't want to be there, and one of the things she said to me was, "Here, let's sit down and read a story." And she read to me from a book called 50 Famous Fairy Tales. And as I grew up, I would read to her from this book, and then my brother Robert would read to her from this book, and then I would read to my siblings, and as I became an adult, I gave copies to my nieces and nephews and read to them from this book. It inspired reading in me, and I hope I inspired reading in my nieces and nephews. And I'd like to read a chapter from that, a passage called How the Sea Became Salt. In a small village far over the sea, there once lived two brothers, one rich, but the other very poor. One Christmas Eve, the poor brother found that he had nothing in the house to eat, neither crumb nor crust. He went to the rich brother and begged for something, even a little flour. The rich brother was selfish as well as rich, and he did not care to be bothered with the poor brother. However, he said, "There's a side of bacon in the smokehouse you may have, but know this. It's the last thing you shall get from me. Never come here again and ask for anything." The poor brother took the bacon, thanked his brother, and set out for home. He was going along a path in the forest when a little old man stepped out in front of him. "Good evening," said the poor brother. "Good evening to you," the little old man said. "Where are you going with that bacon?" "I am on my way home to take it to my wife. We have nothing to eat in the house, and it is Christmas Eve." "If you will go down the path a little way," the old man said, "you will find an enchanted palace. Go inside, and you will be surrounded by enchanted imps. They will want to buy the bacon from you, for there is nothing enchanted imps like better than fat bacon. But do not sell it to them for money. Ask for the old mill that stands behind the door in exchange for the meat. Bring the mill back to me, and I will show you how to use it," said the old man. The poor brother went on and came to the castle, and upon entering, he was surrounded by the imps clamoring for the bacon. They tried to make all sorts of bargains with him, but he insisted on having the old mill behind the door. Finally, the imps gave him the mill and scurried off with the meat. The poor brother took the mill back under his arm to the old man, who showed him how the mill was used. The brother had but to say, "Grind, mill, grind," and name the objects he wanted. But the mill would not stop after you had to use it. You had to hold it in a certain position in order to make it stop. The poor man thanked the stranger for his help and went home. It was dark before he reached there, and his wife was worried about what might have happened to him. "I've been waiting all day long," the wife said, "and there is neither bread nor bone in the whole house. I am so hungry, I am almost dead." "Tell your hunger goodbye," the man said, "for see what I have brought you." He put the mill on the table and said, "Grind, mill, grind." Asking for a holiday supper, he turned the handle. Immediately, a cloth spread on the table, and all sorts of good dishes were set. The wife looked on in awe. "Where did you get such a mill?" she asked. "Do not bother your head about it," was the only answer he would give. How they enjoyed their supper. It had been a long time since they had so many good things to eat. 3 days later, the poor brother gave a party to which he invited all his friends and his rich brother as well. "Where did you get all this wealth so suddenly?" the rich brother asked. "Only Christmas Eve you were begging for something to eat, and now you entertain like a duke." "I found it behind the door," the poor brother answered, for he did not intend to tell his secret. One night, however, he could hold his tongue no longer, and he told his brother about the mill. From that time on, the rich brother tried in every way to possess the mill. At last, the poor brother promised that if he could keep it until harvest time, he would sell it to his rich brother for 300 pounds. The poor brother made good use of the mill that summer. He tried to think of everything he would possibly want for many years to come. When harvest time came, he gave the mill to his brother and told him what to say to start it grinding. But he did not tell him how to stop it. And the rich brother was so anxious to get the treasure, he didn't stop to ask. The morning after the rich brother got the mill, he sent his wives and servants into the field, saying he himself would get dinner together. When dinner time came, he set the mill on the table and said, "Grind, grind, serve up herrings and milk soup." The mill began at once to grind out herrings and milk soup. The rich man filled enough bowls for dinner and then some, and said, "You can stop now." The mill at once began grinding herrings and milk soup. The mill did not stop. The man filled all the pots and pans, and the mill still went on. Herrings and milk soup all over the place. "Whoa," called the man. "Halt! Stop! Quit!" But the mill kept grinding out herrings and milk soup. They ran down on the floor. They flooded the room. The man opened the door, and they ran into the hallway. The rich man flopped and floundered through the sticky stuff, opened the front door, and milk soup and herring ran out into the garden. Meanwhile, his wife, at work in the fields, wondered why her husband hadn't called her to dinner. Perhaps he was having trouble preparing the meal. "Let us go home," she said to the reapers. "My husband must be finding it difficult to get dinner." So the wife and the reapers started home. As they came to the garden, they saw a river of milk soup and herrings rushing toward them. In the midst of all this, the man, floundering about and holding the mill over his head. "Take care that dinner does not drown you," he said to the workers, and then he hurried on his way to the house of the poor brother. "Take this back," he begged. "Stop it, or the whole village will be flooded with milk soup and herring." The poor brother took the mill and stopped it, but he did charge the rich brother 300 pounds for doing so. The only thing the rich brother could do was pay the sum, for he was at the mercy of his younger brother. With the money and what he had saved, the poor brother built a beautiful home. It stood on the seashore and with walls covered in gold that could be seen from miles out at sea. The house and its owner became known wide and far, and people from all over the world came to see it. Among those who came to see this wonderful house was a sea captain. He had heard about the magic mill and wished to see it. He asked if the mill could grind out salt, and was told it certainly could. How fine it would be if I had that mill, the captain thought. I would no longer have to sail the seas. I could stay in port, have ships always loaded with cargo. I could just ask the mill to grind salt, and my ships would always be filled. How much money could I make? The sea captain pleaded and begged to buy the mill, and at first the brother refused. But at last he consented to sell it for a great sum of money. As soon as the captain had the mill in his possession, he hurried away for fear the owner would change his mind and demand the return of the mill. The captain left without waiting to find out how to stop the mill. As soon as he was back on his ship, he set down the mill and said, "Grind, mill, grind. Fill my ship with salt." And the mill began to grind salt. Soon the hold of the ship was full with salt, and piles stood on the deck. The ship began to creak and groan under the weight. "Stop! Stop!" bellowed the captain. But the mill went on grinding. It ground, and it ground, and it ground salt, and still more salt. Finally, the ship broke under the weight and sank to the bottom of the sea. But the mill went on grinding. And to this very day, the mill lies at the bottom of the sea grinding salt. And that is how the sea became salt.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sharon Rhodes, and I am the Family and Consumer Science teacher at SCO Middle School. And so I have a middle school level story called Our Children Can Soar. And it's written by Michelle Cook. Rosa sat so Martin can march. Martin marched so Barack could run. Barack ran so our children can soar. When the versions of this saying began circulating during the historic 2008 presidential election, they captured the belief that, like Mrs. Rosa Parks and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., President Barack Obama was a part of a legacy of trailblazers and leaders, which of whom took a giant step, building on the sweat, toil, struggle, and sacrifice of our slave forebears to make a better nation for the next generation of Black Americans and all Americans. Now, this beautiful book has captured the generation of that message for our children. Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the scholar and historian called the father of Black history, taught us that those who have no record of what their forebears have accomplished lose the inspiration which comes from the teaching of of history and biography. From George Washington Carver to Ella Fitzgerald to Thurgood Marshall, each of the pioneers lovingly depicted here wrote a new chapter in African American history. Our Children Can Soar will help make sure young people know their inspiring stories. As families read this book together, I hope parents and grandparents will share their own memories about the people in the family trees who stood strong and laid the foundation for generations that followed them. All of these stories bring history alive and reinforce the idea that anyone and everyone can use their lives to make a difference. Not everyone's name is written in the history books, but as Our Children Can Soar remind us, African American history is a collective story of many, many people who never gave up and never turned around, but instead quickly took that next step forward in faith so that their children would be able to go even further and have better lives. And they never lost their passion to help the nation honor its creed of freedom and justice for all. It is a story of hope. We teach today's children that these rich lessons and that behind them they can soar. This is from Marion Wright Eldman. Our ancestors fought. So George could invent. George invented so Jesse could sprint. Jesse sprinted so Hattie could star. Hattie starred so Ella could sing. Ella sang so Jackie could score. Jackie scored so Rosa could sit. Rosa sat so Ruby could learn. Ruby learned so that Martin could march. Martin marched so that Thurgood could rule. Thurgood ruled so that Barack could run. Barack ran so our children can soar, and higher and faster and stronger they go. The end. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Bill Bryant. I'm a student advocate with the Lincoln Public Schools for the African American community. And today I'm going to read to you a chapter from a book called Sugar. The book Sugar was written by Jewel Parker Rhodes, and she is an award-winning author and the Piper Endowed Chair and founding artistic director of the Virginia G. Piper Center for Creative Writing at Arizona State University. The story takes place 5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation on River Road Plantation, where freed slaves still work for a meager wage. 10-year-old Sugar lives with her mother on River Road Plantation along the banks of the Mississippi River. Slavery is over, but working in the sugarcane fields all day doesn't make her feel very free. When I was reading this book, I could relate to having to work in the fields, being a native of Alabama and having some experience in the cotton fields. I realized that even though this young lady that wrote this book, this African-American lady, may never have worked in the fields, apparently she knew someone who knew all the details of what it was like to work in the fields, and it just struck a chord with me. And I will read the chapter of the River Road Plantation. Everybody likes sugar. Folks say there wouldn't be any good food without sugar, like rhubarb cobbler, blueberry pie, yellow cake. But I hate sugar. I won't eat it, not ever. No sweets, just savories. I used to tell Ma, cornbread, grits, even nasty okra and green beans are better than sugar. There's all kinds of sugar. Crystals that turn lemons into lemonade, syrup that cools into taffy, or pralines, brittle. There's even sugar cane you can suck until your lips wrinkle and pucker. In the mill, there are mountains of sugar ready to be shipped from Louisiana to the whole wide world. Mom would say, most folks think sugar is something in a tin cup or a china bowl. They don't know sugar is hard. Hard? I'd echo as she poured well water into a bowl. Months of planting, hoeing, harvesting, bones aching, sweat stinging your eyes, dirt clings everywhere, beneath nails, toes, even in my hair. I'd complain before splashing my face with water. Me and Ma always smelled of sugar, sweat, and dirt. What did I smell like when I was born? Spring, she'd whisper, wiping my face dry. Not planting day spring, just spring. Blooming, lemony, and fresh. I wish I could remember that clean smell. When I was 2 days old, Ma strapped me to her back and cut cane. Nights we ate cornmeal cakes. Then me and Ma would lie on our hay mattress on the packed dirt floor. Sugar's hard, she'd sigh, kissing my cheek twice before sleep, before another day tending cane. River Road is almost nothing but cane. There's 2 rows of slave shacks, mostly empty now. There's the big plantation house where the Wilses live, the mill where cane is boiled and dried into crystals, the stable, and the hen house. The rest is cane, growing 10 feet high, row after row, as far as the eye can see. When the wind blows, cane hisses, comes alive, swaying like a dancing forest. Thin, pointy leaves lick the air, flapping like streamers. It's pretty, till you get close. Then sugar gets nastier than any gator. Sugar bites 100 times, breaking skin and making you bleed. Each leaf has baby teeth on all its edges. Even with work gloves, tiny red pricks itch everywhere. my cheeks get smacked. By harvest in my face, hands and arms are all cut up. Outside River Road Plantation, nobody cares who cuts cane. Nobody cares my hand swings the machete, bundles, drags stalks onto the cart. At River Road, my hands are the youngest. Everyone else's hands, except Lizzie's, she's 2 years older than me, are old and wrinkled. Grown hands, stiff and scarred. Sometimes the old folks put their hands in warm water with peppermint to heal, or rub them with fatback sprinkled with cayenne. I've lived at the River Road my entire life. Cane is all I know. Cutting, cracking, carrying pieces of cane. My back hurts, feet hurt. Hands get syrupy. Bugs come. Sugar calls. All kinds of bugs. Crawling, inching, flying, nasty, icky bugs. I hate sugar. During harvest, Mr. Wills sets out lamps so folks can cut cane all night. Cane won't wait, he says. He shouts, cane time, cutting time, or he snarls, 2 bits extra for the most cane cut. Then everybody speeds up, and there are more tiny bites, just like teeth chew rows of corn. Sugar teeth chew on you. Mr. Wills keeps complaining, not enough cane workers. I think, why isn't he helping then? Mr. Wills just walks and watches everyone work. Behind him, Tom, the overseer, cracks the whip, spraying dirt. Since emancipation, there's not enough workers. Almost everyone young enough, without gnarled, crinkly brown hands, has gone up north. Some folks are scared to leave, said Ma. They say, the bad I know is better than the bad I don't. They don't believe they have enough strength left for adventure. We're ready for adventure. We're strong. That's right, Ma, said Ma, hugging me close. We waited for Pa, who was sold right after I was born, to come back for us. We were going to run away, head north. We waited and waited. When the war started, Ma whispered, Pa's fighting for the Union. I just know it, helping to free us. We waited for him, proud, hoping. The war ended. President Lincoln won. Still we waited. 5 years of freedom and Pa still didn't come. Then Ma got sick and died. Her strength drained like water. I'm 10 now. I'm not a slave anymore. I'm free, except from sugar. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Carla Cooper, and I'm the pastor of Quinn Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church and chaplain at Doane College. And I am so honored to be here today to share with you a poem that I read when I was in the 7th grade, which was junior high in those days, middle school today, that has certainly shaped my ministry and has offered me opportunities to encourage young people to take the mantle. And it is written by Margaret Walker, and the poem is entitled, For My People. And it was probably written before slam poetry or written spoken word has taken root. This was written in the late 1940s. For My People by Margaret Walker. For my people everywhere, singing their slave songs repeatedly, their dirges and their ditties and their blues and jubilees, praying their prayers nightly to an unknown God, bending their knees humbly to an unseen power. For my people, lending their strength to the years, to the gone years and the now years and the maybe years, washing, ironing, cooking, scrubbing, sewing, mending, hoeing, plowing, digging, planting, pruning, patching, dragging, alone, never gaining, never reaping, never knowing, and never understanding. For my playmates in the clay and the dust and the sand of Alabama backyards, playing, baptizing, and preaching, and doctor, and jail, and soldier, and school, and mama, and cooking, and playhouse, and concert, and store, and hair, and Miss Chomby and company. For the cramped, bewildered years, we went to school to learn to know the reasons why, and the answers to, and the people who, and the places where, and the days when, in memory of the bitter hours when we discovered we were black and poor and small and different, and nobody cared, and nobody wondered, and nobody understood. For the boys and girls who grew up in spite of these things to be man and woman, to laugh and dance and sing and play and drink their wine and religion and success, to marry their playmates and bear children and then die of consumption and anemia and lynching. For my people thronging 47th Street in Chicago and Lenox Avenue in New York and Rampart Street in New Orleans, lost, disinherited, dispossessed, and happy people filling the cabarets and taverns and other people's pockets and needing bread and shoes and milk and land and money and something all our own. For my people walking blindly, spreading joy, losing time being lazy, sleeping when hungry, shouting when burdened, drinking when hopeless, tied and shackled and tangled amongst ourselves by the unseen creatures who tower over us harmlessly and laugh. For my people, blundering and groping and floundering in the dark of churches and schools and clubs and societies, associations and councils and committees and conventions, distressed and disturbed and deceived and devoured by money-hungry, glory-craving leeches, preyed on by the fossil force of state and fad and novelty, by false prophet and holy believer. For my people standing, staring, trying to fashion a better way from confusion, from hypocrisy and misunderstanding, trying to fashion a world that will hold all the people, all the faces, all the Adams and Eves and their countless generations. Let a new earth rise. Let another world be born. Let a bloody peace be written in the sky. Let a second generation full of courage issue forth. Let a people loving freedom come to growth. Let a beauty full of healing and a strength of final clenching be the pulsing in our spirits and our blood. Let the martial songs be written. Let the dirges disappear. Let a race of men now rise and take control.
Hi, I'm Bria DeVoe, and I'm on the UNL swim team here, and I chose to read the Million Man March poem by Maya Angelou. The night has been long, the wound has been deep, the pit has been dark, and all the walls have been steep. Under a dead blue sky on a distant beach, I was dragged by my braids just beyond your reach. Your hands were tied, your mouth was bound. You couldn't even call out my name. You were helpless, and so was I. But unfortunately, throughout history, you've worn a badge of shame. I say, the night has been long, the wound has been deep, the pit has been dark, and the walls have been steep. But today, voices of old spirit sound speak to us in words profound. Across the years, across the centuries, across the oceans, and across the seas. They draw near to one another. Save your race. You have been paid for in a distant place. The old ones remind us that slavery chains have paid for our freedom again and again. The night has been long, the pit has been deep, the night has been dark, and the walls have been steep. The hells you have lived through and lived through still have sharpened our senses and toughened our will. The night has been long. This morning I looked through your anguish, right down to your soul. I know that with each other we can make ourselves whole. I look through the posture and past your disguise, and see your love for your family and your big brown eyes. I say, clap hands and let's come together in this meeting ground. I say, clap hands and let's deal with each other with love. I say, clap hands and let us get from the low road of indifference. Clap hands. Let us come together and reveal our hearts. Let us come together and revise our spirits. Let us come together and cleanse our souls. Clap hands. Let's leave the preening and stop imposturing our own history. Clap hands. Call the spirits back from the ledge. Clap hands. Let us invite joy into our conversation, courtesy into our bedrooms, gentleness into our kitchen, care into our nursery. The ancestors remind us, despite the history of pain, we are going on people who will rise again and still will rise.
Good afternoon. I'm Devandre Johnson. I do track and field for the University of Nebraska. And I'm reading a poem called Spirit Enchantment by Stanley Crouch. Open your spirit's sounds. Open your ears to secret words. Open your mind to spirit songs. Open your soul to receive. Spirits of your family, spirits of your kind, spirits of yourself. Sounds of secret places, songs of invisible spaces. Come sing the warm songs sung in the inner self. Come sing the warm songs sung in the inner self. Oh, help me, Lord, sing the warm song sung in the inner self, in the inner self, in the inner self, yes, indeed.
I thoroughly enjoyed having everyone come and read today, from young to old to in between. It has been a great experience, and I'm glad the athletes from University of Nebraska were able to make it, and we enjoyed your pieces as well. I want to say that we have the portraits of a movement, and these are, I'm going to give you sizes and everything, but it's on the back of your program. 24 by 32 inch portraits painted on masonite canvas in a high contrast style of pop art. They were created by 8th grade scholars at SCO Middle School. These interpretations feature national, local, and international civil rights icons who played a role in American race relations and social justice. Created to celebrate the 20th year of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Youth Rally and March. These pieces pay honor to the life and dreams of these poignant figures and their accomplishments and struggles for racial and social justice. The pieces will be on display, because we have many more of them, during February at the Lincoln City Libraries. All 20 pieces will be available for purchase at the Nebraska Sports Performance Stand Up, Speak Out auction event, 5:30 to 7:30, Thursday, February 26th, at the Lincoln Firefighters Hall, 215 Victory Lane. And if you have any questions about that, there's a number for you to contact. The kids did a lot of work on these, and I think just coming out to view them all in one place is it's breathtaking, because they learned so much while they were doing the paintings, and so much research that I think will stay with them longer, because they did have to research things that they had never known before. So they're beautiful portraits, and I just think you'll really enjoy seeing them all displayed together. I want to do one thank you for the city libraries for letting us come in and do this every year. We enjoy it. I also want to remind you that on February 26th at the district office at noon, we're going to have another read-in, another African-American read-in, different readers, different subjects. So if you can get away again, please come and join us there in the the new district office building. If you haven't been there, it's beautiful, and you can actually, maybe I'll give you a tour. I want to thank Mr. Bryant, Bill Bryant, for helping out getting this all together. He and I work side by side as the advocates in the district for African American scholars, so we do a lot together, and I just want to make sure that I didn't forget anybody or anything. Okay, thank you so much again for coming, and drive safe.